everybody, this is Daniel Garza, and welcome to another episode of Put It Together. I'd like to start as usual thanking my producer, Mr. Kevin Moyers. Thank you, sir. Inviting everybody to join us at nomorentertainment.com, where you can find all the shows on our network. Go check it out. There's something for everybody. Let's go ahead and get started today. I have a very special guest, Cassandra Dice. Hi, Cassandra Dice. How you doing?
Hello, Daniel. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. She is an author, and we're going to talk a little bit about her book in a minute, but we started talking this morning, and I always apologize online. Time zones still get me. You think at 47 I would understand that different parts of the country have different time zone, but she calls me this morning. I'm like, I have another interview to do. She's like, yeah, me. It's like, oh. You're in Arizona, correct?
I am, yes. I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona.
How's the heat going on over there? Do you guys get winter in Arizona?
We get variables of hot. We don't really have winter per se, but this time of year, it's very much like California. It's 70s and sunnies during the day. It gets chilly at night, probably down in the 50s, 40s and 50s at night. But this is the time of year that all the snowbirds come out. So it's, the roads are really busy, but the weather is just absolutely perfect. So, the heat doesn't come usually till around June.
Yeah. So I feel bad for us because we have to suffer through like 70-degree weather in the winter. It's horrible.
It's horrible. Yeah.
I hate that sometimes at night I have to layer an extra like windbreaker. Like, so traumatic. Now, wait a minute. Snowbirds, is that what you call like the seniors that come from north?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The snowbirds that go to the cold climates in the summer and then they come back here for the winter. So they have ideal climate year round.
Yeah. In Texas, they call them winter Texans. South Texas. Yeah. Yeah. I always used to, when I first moved to South Texas, I used to be like, why are there so many old people? But I moved at the beginning of winter and I was like, why are there so many old people down here? Like I was in my 20s. I'm like, I'm going to hate it here. And was just like, no, they'll be gone by spring. Like, don't worry. I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah, that's how it is out here. It's the same, the 6-month thing.
Well, let's get you started because I want to hear about your story. I want to hear about your book. So Cassandra Dice, tell us how you put it together.
So just to give a little background, I'm originally from Massachusetts, so I kind of grew up in the cold climate. I went to school in Massachusetts. I went to Boston College, and then I got into a corporate America type job. So I've been in corporate America for over 20 years right now. I've been married and divorced. I've got 2 children, aged 10 and 13. And since I've been divorced, I've been doing kind of the online dating single mom thing. And there's so many different websites. There's so many different ways to meet people now versus back when I got married, 15 years ago. And I've just, it's been kind of an adventure with online dating. And so, part of why I wrote this book is because I encountered something that actually happens with online dating often. And there's certain behaviors that people exhibit when they go through something like this. And I'll get into that in a second. But really why I wrote the book was to give people a better perspective and thought relative to online dating and just dating in general and sort of the right attitude to have. And I've kind of seen the ups and downs, not just through my experiences, but also people that I'm friends with, both male and female, that are single and doing the same thing. So basically the book I have, and I also have a blog where I sort of talk about online dating and give people advice on that. But what happened was I had met somebody that was really special to me. And having been single for over 7 years, I hadn't really had a lot of experiences like that where it's somebody that I could see myself marrying again in the future. And everything was perfect. I mean, we just had this, that feeling when you meet someone and everything clicks. And we were together all the time. And, and he basically asked me to just, be with him. And so we were just dating each other. And, we basically had 6 weeks of bliss. But then all of a sudden he disappears. He stops texting. I was accustomed to getting texts from him multiple times in a day. He called me almost every day. And all of a sudden he just kind of flaked. We were supposed to go out on a Sunday night. And I kind of got into a tailspin. And I had a situation that I know a lot of people go through where I was in this spiral of self-doubt, blame. What did I do wrong? How did I turn this person off? Everything was so perfect. And I basically was in a tailspin and not sleeping for a few days. And I didn't think maybe I should reach out to him to find out what's going on, right? I was sort of doing what a lot of people do and just say, oh, I'll play the waiting game. I'll wait for them to come back. I know they will. They always do. But then you start thinking, well, yeah, but what happens when they come back? Am I going to accept them back into my life, or am I going to not let them back in because they have this capability where they could disappear again, and you don't want to give them that wiggle room in your life. And so, so for a couple of days, I just played the waiting game, and I didn't do what probably I should have done, from a communication standpoint. I was actually seeing a counselor during that time, and she encouraged me to be honest and open with this person, reach out to them, which is totally contrary to all the dating books out there. They all tell you as a woman or as a significant other, you should play the waiting game and let the other person kind of guide the relationship. So I did something completely contrary to the ghosting advice that you usually get, and I actually reached out to him. And I didn't hear back. And so again, I was in another tailspin, just, okay, what did I do wrong? I mean, last time we were together, everything was perfect. I met a bunch of people he works with, and I replayed everything over and over again. I went into this 5 reasons why it happened, what I could have done wrong, what the situation. So I basically created 5 fictional stories about what really was going on. And people do this when people are in a relationship, whether they're married or dating or having just met people. We create dialogue with very little information instead of just saying to the person, hey, what's going on here? And so, so when I didn't hear back from him, again, I'm thinking, okay, well, I know I'm eventually going to hear from him because that's what history states with, situations that I've had like this in the past, or situations my friends, both male and female, have had, whether they're gay or straight. You have the same dating phenomenons. And so I broke up with them on text. So that's another thing they tell you not to do, but I did it in a really nice way. I was very non-judgmental, very understanding, and just said, hey, I really enjoyed our time together, and I'm sorry we won't have a proper ending, but I wish you the best in life. And literally like 10 minutes after I sent that, I got this urgent text back from him. No, wait, I don't want to say goodbye. I just was feeling a little scared, and I haven't felt this way about somebody since my marriage, and she hurt me really badly. So I was a little scared. And rather than just telling you that, I, kind of went into my shell and didn't reach out to you. And, I understand if you don't want to see me again, but I really would like to see you again, and we can talk this through. And so it was interesting because I did something different. They say insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Right. And I actually reached out, I communicated, I told him that I cared about him and I wished him the best. And it basically made him realize he wasn't in trouble, that I really did care, and I really was concerned that I hadn't heard from him, because that was my initial text, was I really care about you. We haven't spoken for a while. I hope you're doing okay. And so, we sat down and he walked me through sort of what he went through. And then we ended up having a 7-month relationship, which was fantastic. And, it ended, but, it didn't end on a sour note. It was a timing issue why it eventually ended. But the good thing was the change of behavior and change of approach made me realize that, wow, there might be something here. So then I went into some research. So I reached out to guys that I thought had ghosted me, or friends that had experiences where they thought they were ghosted by the significant other, but actually there was something else going on. And I realized that all this stuff that we do, all this self-talk and this dialogue that we create and these stories that we fabricate are just that, stories, right? And what happens is, as human beings, we respond to these stories that we create. And this isn't just in relationships, this is just life in general. So when I wrote this ghosting guide, I sort of exposed the ridiculous thoughts I had, because I wanted people to realize they're not alone. Right. A lot of times when this happens to people, they just go down this path of negativity and again, story creation, when the reality is there's probably other things going on that have nothing to do with what they think happened.
Right. And
so really the ghosting guide is number one, to make people realize that they're not alone when they do these silly things, but also reframe your mind, right? Because if you communicate with somebody, you're going to get a lot better outcome. You also have to be confident in what you do and the choices you make. So even though this book sort of, goes down a path of when you're ghosted, this is how you should frame your mind. This is what you shouldn't do, which is, I use myself as an example of what you shouldn't do. And then I go into, okay, well, this was my experience and this is where I ended up and this is what I learned from this and this is how I'm behaving moving forward, which I'm very honest and communicative with people now that I date. And, but the other theme of the book is really about just taking care of yourself, protecting ourselves, not being so hard on ourselves when things don't go as planned. When things go out of the path of what we expect to happen, that's just life. And really, it's important that we stay confident. We don't blame ourselves or think we did something that pushed somebody away, because in a lot of cases we didn't. In some cases maybe we did, but the only way you'll know is by reaching out to the person and communicating.
Exactly. So let me go back to the beginning of the story, because I didn't want to stop you, because you're like, I'm going inside. Yes, girl. Yes, we do that. We all do that.
We all do.
Because when you get into that relationship, like I was in a 4-year relationship in my early 20s, and I thought, this is it. I'm never gonna, I don't need anybody else. He's the love of my life. And then he cheated once, and I was like, but I still love you. Don't leave me. So we got back together again. Then he cheated with the same person. And then I was like, okay, I'm out of here. Like, I'm done. And then that started this like 10-year punishing everybody else for what he did.
Right.
And it was all because of not having that dialogue and sitting down and going, like, I knew I had my issues. I was young. I didn't know relationships. I didn't know gay relationships. But as you said, like we go into marriage, we go into moving in with somebody, we live with somebody, and you're like, you've got the Cinderella dream. Like, this is going to be forever, and I'm going to be the slipper fit. I'm good. Have you found that we kind of like subconsciously forget all of the dating rules, all of like how to be out there on your own? Like, as soon as you get into that committed relationship, all of a sudden we forget what it is to be single or what it is to be on a date. Or does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. And in a lot of cases, we expect perfection from our relationships. And perfection is not a realistic expectation, because people aren't perfect. And then you put two imperfect people together, there are going to be some struggles, and you'll go through highs and lows. But it really is important that you maintain that line of communication and maybe set that intention from the beginning in your discussion. As soon as it starts going down the path of this is going somewhere, that should be just part of the expectation discussion. Is I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to tell you how I feel. I'm not going to leave you guessing. And that will mitigate potential misunderstandings, which most of the time when two people are arguing, it's a misunderstanding. Either you misunderstood something they said, or they misunderstood something you said, and then they act on it. And again, they're acting on something that's not real. They're acting on what they think the other person said. So, number one, I think people have that expectation of perfection. And when things happen, because they will, they're out. They're like, okay, I'm out. And actually the challenge is with online dating, I think people are very dismissive with relationships. Like, oh, well, I can find somebody else tomorrow. I can just jump back online and I'll be talking to 5 new people, And so I think in a lot of cases, people don't make as much of an effort to make it work as soon as things get bad. The other thing that I think happens is when you find somebody that fits everything, which, when you think about it, that's really hard, especially, the older you get, you're kind of set in your ways on certain things, and you have different needs. And, you obviously you want the chemistry, but you also want harmony. You want dimension. You want to make sure that you have a lot of things in common, a lot of things not in common. And then the last thing that I think is crucial to make a relationship work is timing. And if you don't have all 4 of those things, it's probably going to be a challenge to keep the relationship going long term. But when you do find that one person that fits all those things, and you think it's going down the path of it not working out, we almost get desperate, you know, like
Right.
this guy that kind of was my muse to write the book. We had chemistry, harmony, dimension. We didn't have the timing. At the time, I didn't realize we didn't have the timing. So here I am thinking this is my next husband. And then I got a little desperate, you know, when he kind of disappeared, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're my next husband. What are you doing right now? You're get back here, you know?
How dare you think you have your own
How
life?
dare you do that to me, your future wife? And they're, you know, they're on a different page. So
Let me ask you a little bit, because we touched on when you divorce or you break up or you separate from that long-term relationship, and we go off again on dating. Because you mentioned in your original story, the fears, like, you know, I got hurt in the past, so I'm going to treat. Is it fear? Is it walls? Is it we're trying to make other people pay for what somebody else did for us? Have you found why do we treat the rebound person? Why does the rebound person get such a bad rap? Why do we treat them like crap and they're usually really nice people, but we come out swinging like kid at a piñata, boom, and we want to make them pay for everything. Have you figured out why we do that?
Yeah, I actually was having a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine about it, and I actually think it's fear, because we've been hurt, and you know, I was, even though the relationship lasted 7 months, when it ended, I was hurt by that too, because again, I thought this was my next husband, and I hadn't found somebody that made me have that high school feeling again. Like you feel like you're in high school, and they touch something from your youth. And it wasn't even so much I was deliberately punishing people. It was more my fear of getting hurt caused me to have walls. And actually I just started seeing somebody, and he called me out on it. And he said, you seem to have a lot of walls, and I'm not really sure why, but I hope it's not because you're making an assumption that I'm going to be like whatever guy made you like this. And I definitely think it's fear, because I consciously will think about it. I'll say, well, I really like this guy, but I'm not going to give him my heart yet, because what if he disappears, or what if he breaks up with me? And then I'm hurt again. I don't want to be hurt. So I'm going to keep him at arm's length so that I don't get hurt. And I think that's what people do, but it comes off as punishing the person. And then when they start doing things that are similar to what our ex-partner did, but maybe the reason for doing the same thing is not the same, right? Like maybe they don't return your call one night at midnight, you start freaking out like, oh my God, he's cheating on me, because that's what the last person did. But the reality is they just went to bed early because they knew they had to get up early the next day. You know what I mean? And you're yelling and screaming because, again, you're responding to what you think is going on based on what happened last time.
Oh, and we all have that what if jacket in the back of the closet, and we run to it. It's like that that really warm quilt throw that your grandmother gave you. And you pull it out when you need that extra comfort, and you're like, boom, throw that on yourself, and you're like, what if?
So yeah.
And it's so hard to get out of there. There's something so protective and so fake nurturing about that what if blanket.
Yeah.
We'd rather sit in there, and even if it's 100 degrees outside, you've got that blanket on you.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good analogy. Yeah. Yeah, and and some of it could be from our childhood programming, you know, like I think the statistic is 80% of our programming occurs by age 8. So if you think about that, if somebody was in a household where one parent left or one parent was never there, you may have fear of that with your partner, you know, as you get older and get into relationships. You have this programming in your heart, which is it's something that's really hard to get rid of. And so in some cases, it's not even just the previous relationships that you've had, it's just programming you may have from childhood.
That's interesting, because I've mentioned when I was younger to people that I was dating, when we get into that conversation, like, well, what do you expect or what do you want? My parents have been together now, geez, like 66 years or something like that. They've been together forever.
Gosh.
Yeah, they've been together forever. My mom had me in her 40s, and my sister was 21 by then. So yeah, 68 years, almost 70 years together. And
That's amazing.
yeah, so I grew up, and my sister has been married for a long. Both my sisters have been married for a long time. So I came from that background where you got married. I never saw my parents argue, although now as an adult, I can put pieces together. I'm like, okay, so they weren't always happy, but they made it work. So I always thought, well, you just make it work. I mean, you might hate each other for a little while, but you make it work, and things get better. And I I'm sure it's not just in the gay community, but I found guys that weren't willing to put in the extra work, or at least I thought. And then if you're not going to do it, then I'm not going to do it. So I'm out of here.
Right.
Yeah. But you're right. A lot of that programming as a kid made me think, well, I'm going to meet somebody and we're going to be together forever. And no matter how tough things get, you just work through it. And then when that rose-colored glasses fell off, I fell into the other mode. I was like, well, fine. Well, I'll date somebody as long as it's easy. As soon as it gets difficult, I'm out of here. And,
Right.
yeah. And that was most of my 30s. So there we go. So taking over your story, you're married for 13 years. You decide to go dating. When I'm 47, so when in my 20s, there was no internet dating. Then in my 40s, all of a sudden there is all these apps. How, it's gonna be kind of obvious, but where were the big differences between dating your ex-husband and now going online?
Well, it's interesting because because I'm in my 40s also, once you get into your 40s, meeting people in the real world isn't as accessible as in your 20s.
Yeah.
Because usually in our 20s, we're hanging out at places where there's a lot of singles, or we're in college or we're in grad school and we're around single people that are the same age as we are. Plus, there's more single people in that age bracket. So it's very easy to meet people, and I call it like in the real world. Once you get to be late 30s, early 40s, or you're divorced, you're a single parent, you've got a little baggage. I've got 2 children, so I've got a little baggage. There's other elements that are applicable to dating. And, as an example, I have a full-time job. I travel a lot, and I have my kids half the time. So it's not like I have all these free nights that I can go out to singles bars and meet people there, nor do I want to. I mean, I'm at the age now where the thought of hanging out in a bar and meeting people in a bar is not even close to appealing. Plus, do I really want to date somebody who's in a bar that often? That's how I meet them. And then, in the real world is also difficult, at Starbucks. People joke, oh, I want to meet somebody in a supermarket. But what I've realized is the nice, cool person that you want to come up to you in a supermarket or at Starbucks probably isn't going to. It's going to be the more aggressive predator player kind of guy or gal that's going to come up to you. And that's not really good either. And, a lot of people don't wear wedding rings. So you're also sort of like, all right, are they married? Are they not married? You see people walk in, the Starbucks I go to, I see guys walk in with kids all the time, and it's just them and the kids, and they don't have a wedding ring on, and they'll chit chat with me because I have my daughter, and they're like, oh, hey, what do you do? Where do you work? I see you all the time. But then, it's like, oh, are they interested? Or are they just being nice? And I'm not going to ask. And then I think, well, maybe they're actually married and they just don't wear a wedding ring. So there's all this uncertainty in our age group, right? And so really, if you're going to meet somebody, you really have to be online. And it's a necessary evil, and there's so many yucky things about it. But really, essentially, it just casts a wider net. And it gives you access to people that you aren't going to encounter in your day-to-day. So I actually like that it exists because it's more accessible and it's very simple. You can do it on your phone. There's Tinder, there's Bumble, there's Match, there's a million different options that you're going to find somebody. But you know, it's a numbers game, and it's sort of, I'm online dating. I always say it's a microcosm of the macrocosm. You're not going to like everybody that reaches out to you. Not everybody that you reach out to is going to like you, but that's okay, you know. And so you really have to set your expectations with online dating too. And that's what my blog talks about a lot, because somebody newly divorced that gets online that hasn't been on, you know, dating for 20 years, they have no idea what they're going to be dealing with. Right? Because what they remember is, oh, I was in college and I'd go out to the bar on Fridays and I'd meet at least 4 people that I could date. And it's not really like that once you get into your 40s.
No, I tell people, because it's always funny, because there's some guests that I'm like, oh yeah, I know why I followed you. And then there's some guests that I'm like, why was I following you? And I told you before we started, I'm like, because we talked to your publicist, and I was like, why did I approach you in the first place? That's right, because I met my boyfriend online, and I remember reading that, and I was like, oh, I want to talk to her about dating online. Christian and I met online. We met on OkCupid. And when people talk to me about online dating, they're like, oh, I hate it. I'm like, look, it's a pinball machine.
I like that.
Like your profile is your quarter. You put it in the slot, and then just get ready for a ride. You're that pinball ball, and you just go, and you're going to fall into different slots, and you're going to go into different worlds, and eventually you're going to land on a winning point, and you just enjoy it. I go, but for most of the time, you're just roaming around. And what I ended up doing, because I had that idea, I was like, this guy on paper, you know, at the time I didn't think about it, but I was like, on paper, this guy was awesome. He was just perfect, and everything about him was just genius. And then we met, and you have that first hug. You're like, oh, yes. And then you kiss, and you're like, oh, yes. And doesn't smoke. He doesn't smoke. That's awesome.
And he knows how to kiss.
Yes. But I'm a recurrent alcoholic, and then all of a sudden they're having 3 margaritas over dinner. You're like, okay,
you're like, really?
next. So but then I started having fun with it, and I was like, you know what? If you're going to be drinking when you know that I don't drink, then I'm ordering the big meal so I can take some home for dinner later.
Right.
Yeah. So we're good.
It's even.
What was your experience going, like, first takeoff on online dating?
Well, I say I like your analogy of a pinball machine. I might take that from you. I always say it's like a box of chocolates. I like your analogy better though, because that really is a good illustration of what happens. And you think that you're going to land on a winning point right away. And a lot of people misrepresent themselves online. A lot of people disappear. A lot of people have different intentions because it's easy to hide behind their profile. And what I initially thought as I met these options was, oh, they're really interested in getting to know me. But what I found was there were some people on there that were, you know, probably had different intentions because they were probably still married. Like, as an example, they'd ask for your phone number and they'd talk on the phone with you, and the phone call would go great. And then they'd text you all the time, and then they'd call you again, but you never meet them in person. And so I started to realize, okay, I'm going to have to incorporate some rules for myself so that this doesn't happen, because there were a lot of men. And as I started talking to my male friends, I found out that women do this too, where they'll text, send you messages, talk on the phone, but they'll never meet you in person. And they kind of dodge that. They'll say, oh yeah, let's meet Friday. And then Friday comes, like, oh, I'm so sorry, XYZ came up. Can we do it Monday? And then Monday comes, and it never happens. They're constantly rescheduling. And so the other thing is, I think a lot of people want to know too much online, where they have these, you know, long profiles. And I feel like online should be more like the real world. Like the real world, you're cute. I think you're cute. You think I'm cute. You're the right height. You're the right age. You're the right look that I like. I'm the right look you like. Okay, let's meet in person now. Because online versus in person, I'm sure you experience this also. Everyone I talk to does. People don't look like what they post. Or even if they look like their picture, they look like a different version of their picture that you're not really attracted. And there's so much to the attraction than just the physical. There's, you know, the voice, the attitude, the personality, the swagger. And if they're missing those things and you've spent weeks and weeks texting and talking, it's so depressing,
Yeah.
you know? And
my favorite is when they walk in and you're like, so is your son coming?
oh, no.
Because that picture is a little old. Yeah. Is because that was one of my, and even in the gay world, yeah, they're big on that. It's like, oh yeah, let's meet, and you're like, okay, well, how about? Because I've always had a really busy schedule. I'm like, okay, well, how about this day? I'll make time. Okay, cool. And then that day, you're like, okay, fine. I'll find something else to do. Is there a rule to how many reschedules a person should allow?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, one of my rules is I won't give out my phone number until we meet in person. And that I found that creates less reschedules, right? Because if you've given your phone number, they have better access to you. They can call you, they can text you, and they're connected to you. So it's not as much of a sense of urgency to meet you when they already are kind of connected to you via text or phone. And so that's one way that I've made it so that they're sort of like, all right, well, I need to meet you in person before you'll give me my phone number. So let's make this happen. But I would say, I mean, I don't necessarily have a rule because most of the people I date are single parents, and I understand that stuff comes up when you have kids. But I look more at the communication and the intention or the intent that they have. Like if they're communicating with me and they make a plan, and when they do reschedule, they don't just cancel because something came up. They say, hey, my daughter got sick. Can we do it on a different day? Like it depends on how they do it. If they just cancel without an attempt to reschedule, and then I've got to say, oh, well, when do you want to do it again more than once? Then I'm done, because I feel like I don't think that you're really making an effort. And I think people more have to pay attention to that. Like, are they just constantly canceling, or are they actually, trying to see you? But if they keep trying to see you, probably by the third time, I just give up, not even think that it was ever going to happen.
How many folks did you come up or talk to that said, how did this happen to me? Like when they get caught up in wrong dates or, just dating the wrong people. Because I know I said it several times, like, how did this happen? Like, how did I end up dating this guy for 3 months who's a total loser, or has another boyfriend, or has a wife? Because I dated a couple of guys. I'm like, you have a wife and kids? How did I not know that? How did your car not be filled with kid stuff? Like, what happened? And then I would come home like, how did I miss that?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great question. And absolutely. But I think that goes into the bucket of not beating yourself up so much, because there are a lot of really deceptive people that make it they're really good at getting what they want out of people and hiding things. And you hear all kinds of horrible stories about, not just people being married, but they're married and they have a girlfriend, and you get a call from the girlfriend who's waiting for him to divorce his wife so that they can be together forever and happy. And like, girl, what do you think he's going to do to you? But it's just in general, and this is what I really preach relative to online dating. You don't know what you're getting. And it's just be cautious, take care of yourself, be aware, notice behaviors. And if they deceive you, it's not your fault, right? I mean, you have to have your eyes open. And believe me, I think there's situations where I'm like, all right, I just closed my eyes to that, right? I probably knew in my gut what was going on, but I looked the other way. So it's really, I mean, take ownership for what happened. Think about what you're going to do next time to prevent it, but then be over it, right? Don't beat yourself up. And I hear a lot of people say, oh, there's so many crazy people online. It's like, you know what? There's so many crazy people in the world, and you'll meet more online because you're exposed to more people, but there's also a lot of good people online. And I met my last serious boyfriend online, and I've met a lot of good guys online. My ex-husband is a great guy. I would totally set him up with my friends if they date my ex-husband, which they wouldn't, because that's like a girl rule, right? But But he's a good dude, and he's on there. And I've got a lot of single guy friends that are on there, and they're good guys. They're not all losers.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a lot of losers on there too, but that's the real world.
I think that the only difference that we have now with the internet is like they're all lumped in together into one website, where before you had to go to different bars or different parties to find them. Now they're all just in there, and you're like, oh, okay, not you again.
You can online stalk people though really well now too. So all you have to do is ask them their last name, right? And you can go on Facebook, you can go on LinkedIn, you can find out more about them. If you really want to, you can Google search to make sure they don't have a criminal record. There's a lot we can do to protect ourselves from, getting taken for a ride in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I have a really good friend of mine, a lady, and she actually works for an attorney's office. But every once in a while, she wants to date somebody and she can't find anything on them. She'll call me and she goes, so I met this guy. And I'm like, what's his name? And I'm already on the computer. It's like, do you have a last name? Yeah, okay. Does he have any friends? Does he mention any friends? Yeah, okay, call on. Blah, 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 blah. And like 20 minutes later, I'm calling her back. I'm like, okay, this is his Facebook page. This is his LinkedIn. He worked here. She's like, how did you find this? And I can't. I'm like, because you have to know, like, I was one of those crazies. So I'll admit it, I was one of those crazies. But you just have to learn. But yeah, I think that's what, when I was first online, that's what kind of scared me. I'm like, I can find stuff really easy. Like if I really put my mind to it. So other people are probably like I think that other people are doing the same thing. And really what that made me do is be more honest on my profiles. It was just like, why are you hiding? Why are you hiding all this stuff? Like, side note here, I didn't know this until a couple of years ago, that on gay websites, HIV status is asked.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So on gay websites, they'll ask you positive, negative, or ask me or something like that. And then the other one on straight websites, I don't think it comes up. So you don't have to say that. And I do HIV education for schools. And at this point, I've been positive 17 years. And I would not put my status on there. And then when we would go out to eat or meet somebody, that had to come up. And that usually was the deal breaker with some people. And then I finally thought, screw it, because people can Google my name and something's bound to come up. I finally put on there positive. And when I met my now boyfriend of 5 years, he already knew. By the time we met in person, he knew and he was cool with it. So yeah. So I agree with you. There's so much that you can put on a profile. And then there's stuff that you just don't want to have to add. But transparency, does that make sense?
Yeah, transparency is key. And a lot of people aren't transparent, but that's part of the vetting process. And like you do, and what I encourage a lot of women to do, go online and you can find out a lot from their Facebook, especially if they're married. You see pictures of their wife still on there. So you definitely want to vet the people, but if you expose yourself to online dating, you have to expect that there is going to be some deception you're going to have to deal with, whether it's the person doesn't look like the picture they posted, or they're going to act like they are really interested and then they'll disappear. Because the other thing is, when people are online, they're probably talking to at least 3 to 5 other people, and maybe you didn't make the cut. They like somebody better than you. And then instead of telling you that, instead of saying, hey, I think you're great, but I've been seeing somebody and we decided to just see one another. I do that all the time. I let people know I don't just disappear because I don't think it's fair. But a lot of people don't have that courage. They're not comfortable being that transparent. And you have to accept that too, that like, don't create facts where none exist. Like, make up a good story. If you're going to make up a story, like somebody ghosts you, and don't make up a story, oh my God, I totally turned them off, or I didn't kiss well. Make up another story. Make up a story like, oh, they won the lottery and moved to Australia. Or they were so overwhelmed by my beauty and kissing abilities that they weren't able to handle it. They had to find somebody who was lesser. I was too good for them. Make up a good story that makes you feel good about why they stopped calling you.
That's a very, that last one is very true to me. I usually tell people they couldn't handle my Mexicanness. I'm just too
Yes,
spicy for
your
them.
beauty. Yes.
So, you know, whatever. If you can't handle the heat, don't date a Mexican. Uh, yeah, you know what? That's kind of funny because Christian and I, when
I
I
love
like
that name, by the way. That's one of my favorite names.
Christian,
Yeah, I almost named my son Christian.
when we met, I'm a chubby chaser. I'll admit it. I like the big boys, but and I
Me
always tell,
too.
yeah, I tell people I'm from Texas. I like the big bubbas. Like, give me a bubba in a pickup truck. I'm sold. Like, I'm so there. Which Christian is not that, but he was a big guy, and when I saw him online, he only had a profile picture, and the thing that got me was his eyes, and my friends were like, he's a little heavy. Like, are you sure? I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, but look at his eyes. I'm like, if I have to wake up in the morning and roll over and look at him in the eyes, I'm like, that's awesome. I'm like, if I can sit across the table from him for dinner and I get to look into those eyes, I'm like, that's genius. That's the beauty of it. I'm like, why would I want to sit across from somebody who has ugly eyes? Or, like, and then he chews with his mouth closed. That's like big for me. The only thing that I really don't like is that he doesn't like tacos, and I'm a taco fanatic. So
What? Who doesn't like tacos? What's wrong with him?
you know, upbringing. That's all upbringing. I blame his parents for that one. Um, what fears, what walls were the easiest and the hardest for you to knock down to be able to enjoy dating again?
The easiest ones to knock down, I guess it wasn't really a wall. It was more of an expectation of things working out most of the time. And so that was easy to knock down with experience. And then the wall that I think I still struggle with knocking down is the fear of getting hurt. And even before I, had my most recent breakup where it really broke my heart, I still think I had that fear just maybe programmed into me from childhood. And a lot of it, I think, that's something we struggle with for a long time, like throughout our lives, is the fear of getting hurt. And I still struggle with it. And I have a lot of, self-talk. I meet somebody and say, you know what, if this doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. There's always a plan. Things always happen for a reason. And I get that. And even when I look back on the most recent relationship that we broke up, it actually has been a year. I say recent, but I realized it was probably a good thing that we broke up. Long term, it probably wouldn't have lasted. But I would say that that's probably the most challenging one, not just for me, I think for a lot of people, because once you care about somebody and you feel like everything's coasting perfectly, you have that fear, not only do they not care about me like I care about them, but, oh my gosh, if this doesn't work out, how long is it going to take me to find somebody that matches up so well? And so, that fear is constant. And I think you have to just be aware of it and, realize that, and maybe even tell the significant other, just say, this is a fear I have. I don't know if this is a fear you have, but what I don't want to do is behave in a manner that illustrates that fear. I'd rather tell you how I feel versus act out where you're saying, wait, what's going on here? Why is she saying this? Or why is he saying this? And, like you said earlier, punishing the person for what you've been through.
Yeah.
And I think it's just going to be, about communication. When I think about how I'm going to get over that wall with the next person, it's definitely going to be communication.
Yeah, that's one thing that Christian and I had from the beginning is we were able to talk through things. We're only a year apart. So we were able to sit down and go, whoa. Like, why did me having a soda piss you off so much? And I'm just giving an example. That doesn't piss us off, people, so don't calm down. And we'll be like, okay, this bugged me, and this is why that bugged me. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I understand. It's not always that immediate. And I'll give you the quick story. The first time we had a big fight, we were driving from Laguna up to Culver City, and I was telling him a story, and he decided to yell at the car next to us and interrupt my story. So I was like, how dare you? So I got quiet. And he's like, finish your story. And I was like, no. If you rather yell at the other car who's not even going to pay attention, then you keep doing that. I don't have to tell you my story. And I was like, I'm done. I'm going to look out the window for the rest of the hour and not talk to you. So then we got all the way to Culver City because my car was there. And I was like trying to pack my bag. It's like, where are you going? I'm going home. Why are you going home? Because I'm through with you right now. Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, if you leave right now, what? Don't threaten me. And we're like, and I think we both kind of like, okay, this is crap. Like, this is not the way this is going to go. So he went into one room and I sit in the other room, and we both huffed and puffed and it just till we got all the air out. And then we're like, okay, what's really going on? And I was like, look, my ex used to do that to me and it really irritated me. And it just triggered. Okay, well, I won't do that again. Fine. And why were you so mad about this? Well, because my ex used to do that, or my dad used to do that. Oh, okay. Well, now I know. Okay, well, let's go out to dinner then. Okay.
I love you.
Yes.
Right?
Let's go to dinner. And I'm ordering dessert and coffee. I'm ordering 2 desserts just because you pissed me off.
Well, it's the intent, right? Like, most of the time we're not intending to piss people off. Right. And that's, that's really where the communication is so important. And that was a great story that shows that, where if, you're in the car and he did that to you, if you said, hey, you know what, it really bothers me when you do that, because my ex used to do it, and I just want to let you know, because I know you're not purposefully trying to make me annoyed right now. Right. And I just want you to know that. And he would have probably said, okay, great. Well, thanks for letting me know. I won't do that again. And then it would have been done. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's made for a better relationship. We still have our fights. I mean, we still get into fights.
Well, you've got the fire, right?
Yeah. We still have
fights at times.
We still have times when we're like, I really hate you right now. And it's like, I don't like you. I still love you, but I don't like you. So I'm going to go into the other room, pick up my computer, and put my earbuds on, so don't talk to me. Okay, we're reaching the 15-minute mark. We actually passed it. So this is the part of the show where we send out some words of wisdom to our listeners. So, Cassandra Dice, what are your words of wisdom?
Really, words of wisdom are: be gentle to yourself. Don't read into everything that happens and think you did something wrong to provoke it. And have good communication with people. Be honest, be transparent, because the arguments and the chaos occurs when there's lack of fact. And a lot of chaos is a result of misunderstanding and not knowing what's really going on. So be comfortable that as long as you're honest with people and you do it in a gentle way with them also, where you're not just yelling and screaming, assume that they're not trying to piss you off. And then that'll give you the strength to give them the communication that they need.
Cool. Is it harder for single dads or single moms?
That's a great question. I think it really depends on the dynamic, because a lot of single moms have their children every day. They have them 100% of the time, but a lot of single dads do too. I don't think you can break it up by male or female. I think it's more just what's their situation. As an example, I've met men that have their kids 100% of the time because their wife died or disappeared, and they have them all the time. So it's really hard for them to date, especially if they have young children, because then, they have to get babysitters all the time. Same story. Some women have their children 100% of the time. So I think the question would be more, what dynamic makes it harder for people to date? And, I think a lot of it depends on how much time you have with your kids. And then on the times you don't have your kids, what else are you doing? Like, I travel a lot, and I usually travel on the days that I don't have my kids. So that limits my time that I can date. So weekends I don't have my kids is usually the best time for me to date somebody. And, during the week I can meet them for lunch or coffee, or, I can meet them for dinner if I'm not gone, every night of the week. But it's challenging for me versus if I didn't work. If I were home, all the time that I didn't have my kids, I'd have a lot more freedom to date.
Right. Personally, I've dated several guys who are divorced with kids, and I've always wanted kids. So for me, it was like, cool. Like, here's a great guy, and he comes with kids already. Like, I don't have to get pregnant. That's awesome. That's a joke. I'm on the pill. I'm on the pill. I won't get pregnant.
Perfect.
and I'm hitting menopause already, so we're done with that part.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, but why is there a fear, or have you figured out why some single folks have a fear of dating somebody with kids?
Well, I think a lot of single people, like I've had men tell me, I'm not going to date you because you have kids. And my reaction is, what makes you think that you're going to be involved in my kid's life? Like, maybe if we get serious down the road, maybe you will be. But most intelligent parents keep their dating life separate from their kid life and don't really integrate their children into their dating life unless it's really serious, like they're engaged or they're, monogamous, or they're going to be living together. And my understanding of why a lot of people are afraid of it is because they think that they're going to be responsible for somebody else's child. And, my kids are 10 and 13. They have a dad that has them 50% of the time that's completely in their life. They don't need a father figure. So when I date a man, I'm not going to be pulling them into my children's world. I'm not going to expect them to be a father figure to my children. They're just going to date me and get to know me, and I'm going to get to know them. But I think a lot of people make the assumption that the woman is looking for a daddy to take care of the kids. Or in some cases, the woman assumes the man is looking for a mom if their mother isn't present. I think that's where the fear comes, which to me, that's sort of a harsh assumption, that you think that person is going to be needing a father or a mother for their children. But I also ask them why. Like, I've had people tell me that, and I've said, well, why? What's your concern? And it's sort of like what we've been talking about all along. Their previous girlfriend expected them to step in and be a father to the children, and he didn't feel comfortable doing that again because I've actually had guys tell me they were more attached to the children than the girl, and it was hard for them to break up because of the children. So, rather than just making an assumption that he's selfish and just doesn't want to spend time with kids, I asked them why. I said, well, what are you concerned with me having kids? And then once they give you the reason, then it makes sense. Like the last guy that told me he didn't want to date someone with kids, when I asked him why, his answer was, because I like to travel a lot and I like to take long weekends with, women I date. And I know when you have kids, you don't have as much flexibility to do that. I said, know what? You're right. I'm probably not your girl, because that's true. So it wasn't so much that I had kids. It's just that I didn't have the flexibility that he was looking for.
Now, for folks that are listening, you talk about timing. That would be a timing thing. Correct?
Right. Yes. Because if somebody doesn't want to date somebody else with kids, once the kids are in college, they'll probably be okay with it because the kids aren't living with you anymore.
Yeah, because I want folks, and I don't think it's just, like you said earlier, it's not just men or women. I think it's the dating pool now. Like anybody who's dating, allow timing to be a factor in why you're not seeing somebody, and not immediately put blame on yourself and be like, oh, it's because I have kids. It's because and make it a negative. It's because I have a really demanding job. No, that's a good thing. You have a good job. You have kids. That's awesome. But it's just not the right time to date this kind of person. So don't beat yourself up. And because I used to do it too. So
yeah, and that's great advice. And don't take it personally. Like I could take it personally that somebody doesn't want to date me because I don't have kids, but I get it. If I didn't have kids and I were single and I met a guy and he had his kids half the time, I probably would, I'm a little concerned about dating somebody that doesn't have kids, because I don't want them constantly waiting around for me to have free time when they've got more free time than I have. So right. I'm kind of the same way, but on the opposite side, where if they don't have kids, I'm a little bit hesitant to date them.
Yeah, because I finally I used to work weekends jobs. Like my job started on Thursday to Monday, so I have Tuesday and Wednesday usually free, and most people don't. And I was like, well, that makes it hard. So I ended up getting a lot of people in my line of work because we usually had weekdays off, and I lived
Yeah.
in Laguna, so they would come to Laguna and we hang out by the beach, and it was fun. And then, okay, well, we know that weekends are not typical weekends. And then when I started dating normal people that had regular jobs, I'd be like, what do you mean party on Saturday? I can go out on Saturday. I got to be up early Sunday morning. Like, what?
Exactly.
You're nuts.
Party.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people, I had to be like, you know what? You're wonderful. And I really care about you, but this is not going to work. And I'd rather not feel left out and then be like, oh, I can't. And you're always calling me from a party half drunk and like, come join me. Okay. So I'm venting about one particular person. That's for a coffee talk next time we meet in person.
Yes, exactly.
We're almost done. We're almost out of time. And I feel like I have so many more questions for you.
I can come back.
No, we definitely have to do a second one. And plus, if you come out to California, we'll do a live feed episode where we can probably take some questions from people or something.
That'd be awesome.
That would be really cool. One last dating tip for people, single moms or dads that are just now, as they're listening to this podcast, heading out into the dating world. What little friendly piece of advice could you give them?
I'd say enjoy the ride. I mean, don't be so desperate to match up with the first person you meet. Enjoy all the different personality types you're going to meet, and you are going to meet a lot of variation out there. And be okay with it. Don't get in the dumps about it. Don't get depressed if the first 10 people you meet aren't anything close to what you'd be interested in. Just roll with it and have fun with it, and don't take it too seriously, especially if you're recently divorced. Like, you should not be hooking up with somebody seriously for at least a year if you're recently divorced.
Oh, wow.
Like, get out there and see what's out there. Because you're not doing yourself or the other person any favors if you do that. But just be light with it. Enjoy it, and just look at it as, getting experiences that you wouldn't otherwise receive with online dating. Because there's a lot of fun to it too. It gives you a lot of good stories to chit chat with your friends about too.
And let me tell you, single people out there, newly single people, the best wing person, whether you're male or female, is a gay person. I always have a gay friend.
That's great advice.
They're great. We're great for the good socials. We'll help you decorate your place, make it cute. We'll give you great advice on clothes, whether you're male or female. And we always know where the best parties are. Well, I don't, because I'm old now, but but I know where the best coffees are being served. So we'll definitely. So always have a gay friend in your circle of friends. There you go. That's my throw in. Cassandra Dice, thank you so much for being on the show. I feel like I still feel like we left so much out, but we'll definitely have to do a follow-up show and get some more pointers from you. Let the folks know your book. We didn't get to your book. Let's talk. Tell them where you find your book and all your info on how to contact you.
Sure. It's ghostingadvice.com is where you can find my book. And that's also where I have a blog. I'm on Facebook, Cassandra Dice on Facebook. And that's pretty much it. That's how you get in touch with me. And that's how you find the book. I'm also on Twitter at ghostingadvice.com.
Tell them a little bit about what your blog is about and what your book is about.
Sure. So the book is a ghosting guide, which, as I mentioned earlier, it's sort of a survival guide for when you get ghosted and how to handle it and how to reframe your mind and take back control over your life, because a lot of people go into a tailspin when this happens. It also gives a bigger picture thought process about how you should deal with dating in general. And it's a guide. It's 20 pages. You can read it really quickly. And then my blog really talks about dating advice. So I'm actually in the process of trying to find a publisher for a dating guide for people over 40. And it's really geared towards people who are new in this universe of online dating and what to expect. But really that's what my blog focuses on. So, there's a lot of good free advice on there about online dating, do's and don'ts, and mindset to have. And I've got a few kind of fun stories of some crazy stories that some crazy things I experienced in the dating world. So again, you're not alone. We all go through it.
And typical blog, people can comment and discuss and.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
That's really cool. So we'll put all the information for everybody following me. We'll find all this information on the Facebook page. So go check it out at Put It Together Podcast on Facebook, and all the links and information will be there. So you can get in touch with Cassandra. And but don't worry, folks. Don't worry. Don't panic. We'll have her back on the show. I'm going to make sure that we have her back, because I feel like there's so much. The dating world is an ever evolving and morphing community. So there's always new things to learn and new things to do. Cassandra, thank you. Don't hang up, because we're going to do your little promo videos. For everybody listening, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. If you're single out there, if you're newly single, give yourself a break. Things change in a year, things change in 5 years, things definitely change after 10 years of not dating. So put your feet in the water and learn to swim again, and it'll be fun. If you're single out there and you're dating, hey, give single folks with kids a break. Enjoy them. You never know. They have a lot of experience. They have a lot of knowledge. I've dated folks with guys with kids, and there is this calmness and there's this serenity that comes in the relationship. And you definitely learn a lot about yourself and patience, and you learn about adjusting to life. And I really learned about unconditional love, because there's this love that they have for their kids. And hey, pointer, if they can give that kind of love, that's somebody you want in your life. You don't want somebody that doesn't know how to love. So take that for me. For now, I want to thank again my producer, Mr. Kevin Moyers, for all his help and support. Thank you, sir. I want to thank my guest, Cassandra Dice, for all information. Make sure you go follow her. Again, her information will be on the Facebook page. Thank you for listening. This is Daniel Garza saying, hey, put it together.